Hi there, Chris, chap in the cap, Motolegends and all of that. Now, here at Motolegends, we think we know our onions. We are quite technically oriented as a motorcycle apparel seller. We work very closely with a number of our manufacturers, the distributors, their designers, and we spend a lot of time here in this shop talking to customers about motorcycle wear. So we pick up lots of views. We are talking all the time. We're at this 7 days a week talking about motorcycle wear. And we think we've got lots of advice, lots of hints and tips for customers about how to get the most out of their gear. And when we're talking to customers who come in the shop, at times appalled is too strong a word, but sometimes we are surprised at some of the basic things that many motorcyclists don't know. So what we've done today, we've put together a list of our top 10 hints and tips about how to get the most out of your motorcycle wear. So let's look at tip number 1. So, how many times have we heard the lament, the lining has come out of my gloves? Well, I'm sorry, but I have to inform you that linings do not come out of gloves on their own. What happens is people pull them out, and that's because they are taking the gloves off incorrectly. Now, one thing I have to say is there are 2 ways of fixing a membrane to a glove. You can have a loose membrane, what we call a drop liner membrane. You can have a bonded membrane. If you've got a bonded glove, a glove that's got, say, Gore Grip, which is the Gore-Tex laminated membrane, then there's not a possibility of pulling the waterproof lining out. There will often be a comfort lining inside that, so you can still pull that lining out, but if you've got a bonded waterproof membrane, the position is made a little bit easier. But what happens? You've got a glove that you think fits. But in the summer, your hand expands, it gets hotter, and that's putting more pressure on the glove. Or let's say it's in the winter, and this is soaked with rain on a rainy day, then there's going to be more pressure to get the glove out. But if you take the glove out properly, you will not pull the lining out. What you do, you get your hand over the 4 end fingers, because what we're trying to do is relieve any pressure on the end of the fingers because the linings are sewn in. So you get your 4 fingers on the end, then you just pull your hand out. Then you won't be putting pressure on the lining, it will not come out. You can ride with a glove, a waterproof glove, for years and years. The lining will not come out if you always put it on, or rather take it off properly. Now, any modern technical jacket, by which I mean a motorcycle jacket with a waterproof membrane, works on the basis of a membrane that has millions of holes in it, and it's those holes that allow the sweat to escape. The holes are basically too small to allow raindrops in, but it keeps you comfortable, it keeps you dry, because as you're sweating, then that sweat can escape through those holes. So whenever you're in hot conditions or conditions where you're working hard on the bike, you're going to be sweating. The last thing that you should wear is anything in cotton, because the long yarn fibers in cotton don't allow moisture to wick. They absorb the moisture. So if you played football, you'll remember the t-shirt is covered with moisture under the arms or wherever. That means the moisture is not wicking. The moisture has been absorbed into the material. So if you go and spend £1,000, £1,200 on a motorcycle jacket and you wear the wrong base layer, you very quickly turn that into a £200 jacket. It's kind of crazy. If you want the best membranes, the highest levels of breathability, you just have to invest in the extra few quid to get a proper breathable membrane. Everyone does them, most motorcycle brands, so Stadler, Rucker, this is a Klim one, Halvarsons. It's not a lot of money, but you are wasting money on a high-end suit. In fact, you're wasting money on any kind of waterproof suit if you then ruin it by wearing cotton. You need a proper technical base layer. So you've had a motorcycle jacket for a number of years and it's always been waterproof. Look at me, not that, I'm over here. That's our magical helmet display. That's irrelevant to this video. So as I was saying, you've had a jacket, it's served you really well, it's always been waterproof. And then after a couple of years or 3 or 4 years, whatever it is, it starts to leak. Your immediate thought is the jacket's broken in some way, the membrane has been breached, somehow it's leaking. In fact, much as all retailers would love to sell you a brand new jacket, the chances are that the durable water repellent on the outer surface of the jacket has worn off. Now, all membranes will eventually allow water to pass through, so even the best jackets from the likes of Rucker, Stadler, Klim and so on rely on the durable water repellent. That stops a lot of the water coming through, and it means that the membrane doesn't have to work as hard. But if your DWR, as we call it, the water repellent, has worn off, that allows too much water into the jacket, and eventually, in severe conditions, that can mean, sometimes in conditions that are not that severe, that can mean that A, you start to feel wet, but also the membrane or the seams can be breached. So you need to regularly wash and reproof your jacket. So you want a set. This is our favorite set. Nick Quacks do one, but this is our favorite set from a company called Storm. All happens in one wash. You wash the jacket, obviously you've taken the armour out, you then reproof it, but this is the important part. It will last for a number of months, 6 months, a year, if you're not doing that many miles, but that means that as the rain hits you, it will kind of run off the jacket. Water won't get into the jacket, you will stay drier for longer. So, first time you think that your jacket has sprung a leak and it's waterproof, you should go out, wash the jacket and check to see if it's doing it after that. Often that will cure the problem. If obviously it doesn't cure the problem, then you do have indeed a leak. So it started raining, or you think it's about to start raining. You want to put your waterproofs on. First thing, always go for a two-piece in our view. They're more flexible. At times you'll only want to put your top half on. So you stop. First thing, a jacket. It's slightly counterintuitive, but always put your jacket on first, because if it's raining, you want to keep your top half on, keep your top half dry whilst you're putting your trousers on. Second thing is pants. Carry your waterproofs in a plastic bag. What you then do, because when you put your waterproofs on, they will get stuck, they'll get caught on the heel of your trouser, maybe your boots or your trousers are wet, they'll get stuck, they'll take ages to put on, you'll have to try to balance on one foot, it can be a nightmare. What you do, you put the bag over the foot, you then pull the waterproofs on. I'm not going to do it, but you pull the waterproofs on, it will just slide over the foot, it will not catch, it'll be much, much quicker. Obviously you do one foot, you do the next, and then you're in them. So, Waitrose bag, obviously that's going to work better than Tesco's bag. Aldi bag, I'm not sure whether that works at all, but that's up to you. So within the motorcycle world, there are three distinct types of motorcycle glove. There's a pure summer glove, leather, textile, whatever, breathable, no membrane. There's a summer waterproof glove, no thermal liner, but a waterproof membrane that's obviously going to keep the rain off, but it will also keep you warmer because it will combat the wind chill effect. Then there's a proper winter glove, which will have a waterproof membrane almost by definition, plus a thermal liner. We buy them all, or we buy them all, size them all rather, in a slightly different manner. When we go for a summer glove, there's no membrane that's going to constrict the expansion of the glove. And a leather glove, even a textile glove, is going to give. So when you're buying a summer glove, basically buy it as tight as you can. Now, sometimes that means that for a first week or month or so, they're going to be a little bit tight. We have people say, oh, it hurts a little bit here, or you know, it's not quite right here. You're going to be hopefully wearing these gloves for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So get them as tight as you can, bed them in. Best thing actually is to go out in the rain occasionally, get them wet, the leather will expand, it will then shrink to your hand. But in essence, buy a glove, a summer glove tight. If you buy a summer glove and it's too comfortable on day one, in a couple of years it'll be all over the place, it'll be baggy, the armour won't be in the right place, you won't enjoy wearing it. Summer waterproof glove, a wee bit different. The PTFE membrane, which is basically the waterproof membrane, restricts how the material can give. So whether it's a leather glove or a leather and textile glove or a pure textile glove, the membrane will not expand in the way that the natural material will. So when you're buying a waterproof glove, you need to buy it a little bit larger, because whereas the summer glove is going to give over time, a waterproof glove, it's going to give a little bit, but it will give nowhere near as much. So you do not buy a waterproof glove super tight. The other reason is that if you buy a waterproof glove super tight, when you're hot or when the glove gets wet, you'll try and pull it out. It'll be difficult to get out. You'll risk pulling the lining out. It'll be very uncomfortable to take ages to get in and out. So when you're buying a waterproof glove, give yourself a bit of room. You want a bit of extra space around the glove. Obviously, we don't want the fingers to be stupidly long, but in principle, we buy it a little bit larger. The same applies really to a full-on winter glove, but for slightly different reasons. Yes, you've got a membrane, and the membrane is going to stop the glove expanding and stretching and getting larger. But also in a winter glove, we want a layer of air around the hand, because the way a glove works, it's keeping your body heat in. Then we want a gap of air that traps that heat between the outer surface of the glove and your body. So if you buy a winter glove that's too tight, you will not enjoy that benefit. But also you'll have the same as I was mentioning with the summer waterproof glove, that when you get hot, when it's raining, the glove gets wet, you try to pull your hand out, you've got two thick liners here, you will at some point pull the liner out. So as with the summer waterproof gloves, the winter gloves, you are buying large, not super large, but you want some space in them. Slightly different reasons between the summer waterproof glove and the winter glove, but in both cases, you want to buy them a little bit on the loose side. Pure summer glove, buy it as tight as you can bear. So wherever you ride, whenever you ride, one of the most important things that you can carry with you at all times is a waterproof jacket. Now clearly, if you're wearing a leather jacket or a summer jacket that has no waterproof membrane, it's an absolute necessity. But even if you've got a waterproof jacket, this is going to be a very useful bit of kit. Now, obviously, the first idea is it protects you against the rain. But if you've got a waterproof jacket, you might think that's not necessary. But there are a couple of things that you need to be mindful of. One is that a waterproof jacket is also a windproof jacket, because basically a windproof membrane and a waterproof membrane are the same. So when you put on a waterproof jacket, you are going to increase the body's temperature quite significantly, because what makes you cold on a cold day is really the wind chill factor. It's 2 degrees, you're doing 70 miles an hour, the wind chill factor is horrific. Even though you've got a membrane, that's going to get through to the body. Having a second windproof membrane on the outside of your jacket will warm you up considerably. Now, there's another reason, and that is that there's a lot of talk these days about laminate membranes, about bonded membranes, membranes that are bonded onto the inside of the jacket. And because of the way they're constructed, that doesn't allow water into the jacket. So you stay dry for longer. So if you're riding 6, 7, 8 hours in the rain, a laminate jacket is better. But a lot of people are convinced them that they can't possibly go riding unless they have a laminate jacket. And that's frankly nonsense. If you wear a waterproof jacket like this over the top of a traditional drop liner jacket, you're actually creating something that is better in some ways than a laminated jacket. Because a laminated jacket, you can imagine in 4, 5, 6 hours of rain, it will not soak the rain in like a drop liner jacket, but it will still get wet and damp. If you put one of these on over a traditional drop liner jacket, you can ride for the same amount of time. When you stop in the evening or for lunch or dinner or whatever, you take the waterproof off, this is going to be absolutely bone dry. So the use of a simple garment like this, you can turn a drop liner jacket into something that's even better than a laminate jacket. Our view is never leave home without a waterproof jacket. Graham, I'm here. Over here, Graham. Over here. So customers who come to the shop often talk about, when they're looking at gloves, they talk about the perennial debate. Do you wear your glove cuffs inside the sleeves of your jacket or outside? Let me end that perennial debate, because as far as we're concerned, there is no debate. Now, if you've got racing leathers, if you're out on the track, yes, you'll have those long cuffed gloves that go on the outside. That's the only time that you would wear a cuff on the outside. If it's summer, you want airflow, you're going to have a short cuff glove, so that doesn't really go inside or out. But if you want to keep your hands dry, then it's very simple. The cuffs have to go inside the sleeve of the jacket. And that's because if you don't do that, then the rain will run down the jacket into the glove. So the way that we wear a motorcycle glove, a waterproof motorcycle glove with a motorcycle jacket, with a waterproof motorcycle jacket, good jacket will always have a zip and a Velcro fastener. So you undo the zip, that will allow you to put the cuff under the sleeve. You're then cinching it as tight as you can with the Velcro to make that seal. So it's most unlikely, if you've cinched it, that rain is going to come up the sleeve, and if it did, it would have to come up and then back down into the hand. And obviously, the rain is going to run down the sleeve this way. So if you want to keep dry hands when you're riding in the rain, it's very simple, cuffs inside the sleeve of a jacket. One of the biggest issues for motorcyclists and motorcycle retailers alike is waterproofing. Now, when you go into a motorcycle shop and you bring back a pair of gloves or a pair of boots and you say it's leaking, most of them, in most shops, of course, I'm not talking about an august institution like Motolegends, but in most motorcycle shops, they're going to look at you as though you're stark raving bonkers. And it is true that in many instances where people think their garments are leaking, they're actually not leaking. Water's coming in under the cuff of the glove, it's coming in over the boot if they're wearing a short boot. It can come in underneath the trouser, underneath the jacket rather, and get into the trousers, or water can leak in from the helmet down the jacket. People think they're getting wet, and often it's not the membrane. And of course, you have to bear in mind that when you go motorcycling, there's no such thing as being 100% dry. If that's really massively important for you, you know the answer, go buy a car. But if you do think you've got a garment that's leaking and it's within warranty, because once a garment's out of warranty, again, most retailers are not interested. But if you want to test to find out whether a fairly new purchase, pair of gloves or boots, is leaking, there's a very simple dunk test. It's the test that we here use. It's not the definitive test. There are more scientific tests, but our way of finding out when a client sends us a glove or a boot and says it's leaking, this is the test we perform to find out whether we immediately agree, because it becomes very apparent. So you get a bowl of water. Normally, I think a sink bowl, something that's a bit deeper than this. You take the glove. Obviously, you can't put it beyond the cuff of the glove because then water's going to come in, and that doesn't count. But if you put your hand in the water, normally within a matter of seconds, but certainly within a minute, you will ascertain whether, because your hand will feel wet, you will know whether that's leaking. So I can tell already, this is a glove I wear a lot in the rain, I know it doesn't leak, there's no water coming into that glove, I know it's pretty okay. There's a similar test that you can do if you've got a pair of boots that you reckon are leaking. You are going to need a bigger bowl than this, but in essence, the theory is the same. You take your boot, you immerse it in water up to the top of the membrane. So not all boots have a membrane that go right to the top. That, in this case, in this pair of Daytonas, that's the top of the waterproofing layer. So you can put it in water such that it comes in there. You hold it in there for a minute or two, and again, within a couple of minutes, that will leak. If this is not leaking, then I think you probably have to countenance the fact that water might be getting in another way. It's hitting the road and coming in over the top of the boot, or it's coming down your jacket into the gloves somehow. But this is the test that you should do before you go to your motorcycle dealer and say your gloves or boots are not working. Try this test. If you find that there's water ingress very quickly, then I think it's an open and shut case. You should ask your dealer, if they say they want to go away and test it, you should ask your dealer there and then, can they do the test? Because if they find that it does leak, then again, they should swap your gear over immediately. There shouldn't really be any argument, provided, of course, that the garments are still under warranty. Truth be told, I hate doing any videos where I have to take my cap off, but professional to the end, I'm prepared to make that sacrifice. Now, there's a place that we want a helmet to sit on your forehead, because if it sits too low, you're going to have to crook your neck to see a mile down the road. So, that is too low. That's right on the eyebrow. Now, sometimes a helmet that sits this low, that's an indication of the fact that the helmet is just too big for you. And what I'm going to recommend in a minute does not overcome the fact that a helmet is too big. But some people, because they've got a taller forehead or just the shape of their head, even when they've got the correct size helmet, it's going to sit too low. Now, in that circumstance, that's not ideal because, as I've said, if it's there to look down the road, you're going to have to crook your neck. It's going to put strain on the neck. That's not what we want to do. So what we do is this. It's very simple. We take a sponge. It's just a domestic sponge. These come in different thicknesses, obviously. and we put it in the roof of the helmet. It doesn't compromise the helmet in any way in terms of safety. In fact, on one level, it probably improves the safety of a helmet. So we put that in the roof. This is the same size helmet. That was an L, a large. I repeat Neo, this is also a large. But when I put that on the roof, that puts a better gap there. So Graham's going to do a shot just to prove that I have put a sponge in here. So as I've said, it's just a domestic sponge. But if you're finding that your helmet sits too low, you're happy with the comfort, it's not causing headaches, it's not loose. If you just want to raise it a little bit, you just put a sponge in the roof. There is one other slight benefit to this. If you have a helmet that's just too tight and it's putting pressure on your forehead, our foreheads tend to slope a little bit. So if you put a sponge in the roof, you can often just relieve the pressure. And we see this a lot in the shop. Customer puts a helmet on, oh, that's painful. Just a little sponge just raises it a smidge. That can suddenly take the pain away. So domestic sponge, any supermarket, but use that and you can put the helmet in the right position if it's sat too low. Regular as clockwork, every winter, as soon as it gets cold and somebody goes out in the heavy rain, they will come in the following week and say, these gloves I've got, these waterproof gloves, these Gore-Tex gloves, whatever they are, they don't work, my hands got soaking wet. But there's a reason for it, in certain circumstances. So you're riding along, it's got to be heavy rain. You've got your heated grips on full, so they're very hot. What that does, that reverses the way in which the membrane works. So if in these conditions, blinding rain, heated grips on high, if your gloves leak, there's not a problem with the gloves, you have just changed the way in which the membrane operates. So the way a membrane operates is it allows the passing of moisture from the hot, damp side through to the drier side. So that's what happens when we sweat. So a breathable membrane, we get hot, we sweat, the body's trying to cool down, and that sweat escapes through the jacket, and that process of sweating, the evaporative cooling that creates, cools the body down. But when you've got your hands on hot grips and your gloves are wet because it's raining heavily, what you end up having is hot, moist, outer to the gloves. So this water's got hot, so it's then hotter and more moist on the outside, and that will pass moisture through to the inside of the glove. So there's nothing wrong with your gloves. They'll be fine the next day when you've not got your heated grips on. It won't ruin the membrane in any way, but your gloves have not broken down. You've just used them in conditions that have reversed the membrane. So a lot of our regular customers, people who have been riding for many years, will know a lot of those hints and tips that we've gone through. So I'm sorry if they were boring, but I'm hoping that most people found that there were one or two little nuggets in there that are going to make their riding life a little bit more comfortable. So this was our first attempt. We've just done 10 hints and tips today. Sean, our shop manager, he's going to do another one in a couple of weeks' time. I can warn you now, his stuff is going to be so technical, you're going to have to really pay attention. I'm only allowed out on really rather simple subjects, but Sean will go into more depth on his, so make sure you get a cup of cocoa first. Anyway, this has been Chris. Hope to talk to you soon.